Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a landmark legal battle that started with a simple and, honestly, a very frustrating problem.
So let's just dive right into it. Can a building be a bad neighbor? I mean, it's a fascinating question, right? And it's one that went all the way to the highest court in the UK, all because a brand new skyscraper was casting a literal shadow over its community's entertainment.
Here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the tower and the blocked signal. Then we'll get into the legal tool the residents used, the law of nuisance. We'll ask who has the right to sue, look at the court's final decision, and finally explore why this case still matters so much today.
All right, so let's jump right in. Our story kicks off in London, back in the early 1990s. There's this massive new building going up, the Canary Wharf Tower, which you probably know today as One Canada Square. Now, for the folks living nearby, this thing wasn't just some new addition to the skyline. It meant their TV screens went fuzzy or just blank. So you can imagine the frustration. Nearly 700 of them got together and decided to take legal action.
Now, obviously, you can't sue a building, so the residents went after the developers, and they used this really old legal concept called private nuisance.
So what is private nuisance? Well, in a nutshell, it's a law that protects your right to enjoy your property without your neighbors causing some kind of unreasonable problem. Think, excessive noise, awful smells, that kind of thing. The big question here was, could a blocked TV signal, could that possibly count? So really, this whole enormous case boiled down to two key questions the court had to answer. First, who gets to sue? And second, what actually counts as a nuisance? Does a blocked TV signal even make the cut? Okay, so let's tackle that first question, because this is where things start to get really interesting. Who exactly gets to stand up in court and complain about a nuisance? So this lawsuit wasn't just brought by the people who own the property. Oh no, we're talking tenants with leases, spouses of the owners, even their kids living at home, and lodgers too. Pretty much anyone living in these homes was part of the claim. And you can see why this was such a critical issue, right? I mean, if anyone living in a house could sue, it would just open the floodgates. It would massively expand who could bring these kinds of claims. Well, the court's answer was crystal clear, and it all came down to this key finding from Lord Goff. The focus here is all about a right to the land. Nuisance isn't about some personal annoyance. It's a tort against land. So what does that mean, a right to the land? Well, the legal term is proprietary interest. It basically means you have a legal right or ownership stake in that property. So if you're an owner, you're in. If you're a tenant with a lease, you're probably in. But if you're a spouse, a kid, a guest, you're out of luck on this point. You don't have that direct legal stake. All right, so with the who question settled, the court moved on to the main event. Is a blocked TV signal actually a nuisance? And the court's answer here was no. They ruled that the mere presence of a building, which just so happens to block a signal, can't be considered a legal nuisance. Their thinking was, look, a developer isn't doing something unreasonable just by putting up a building on their own land. It's not like the tower was actively doing something, It was just there. So let's just sum it all up. On the question of who has the right to sue, the answer was only people with a proprietary interest in the land. And on the question of is TV signal interference a nuisance, the court said no, not when it's just caused by a building being there. So this brings us to our final section, why this case still matters. You might be thinking, okay, why are we talking about a 25-year-old case about fuzzy television? Well, because its principles are now absolutely fundamental to property law. So this case really solidified two key legal principles. First, on who can sue, it firmly established that to bring a claim in private nuisance, you need that proprietary interest in the land. And second, on what a nuisance is, it set this really powerful precedent that a building simply existing, you can't complain about that as a nuisance. These two rules provide so much certainty for homeowners and developers, and they're still taught to every law student today. So here's the key takeaway. Your right to enjoy your property, it doesn't give you a right to a perfect view, or in this case, a perfect TV signal, if your neighbor just builds something on their own land. At the end of the day, the law has to balance the rights of one property owner against the rights of another. And that's a tough balancing act, especially in a crowded, modern city. And that's really the question this case leaves us with today. In our world of 5G, satellite internet, Wi-Fi, when a new skyscraper could block a signal that you need for your job, for your connection to the world, should the law protect you? As our reliance on these invisible signals just keeps growing, you have to wonder if the legal definition of nuisance needs to evolve right along with it.